SULKNATIONtv. In this episode, I'm in the Golf. I'm in my daily, and I thought I'd do a video on how the MK7 1.6 litre TDI Volkswagen Golf is the most reliable car ever. Now, obviously, when I say that, I mean, you know, the most reliable car I've ever owned. I haven't owned anywhere near as many cars as Ed. I mean, Ed's probably owned as many as I've owned since he's been on the channel. So, and that's Ed for you. Ed is unfortunately not in this video. He's not very well at the moment, so he won't be in a few videos, and then he'll be back firing on all cylinders, being slightly camp, and doing impressions that I don't understand. But until then, it's just me again. So, I got this car in April 2017. So I've owned it for about 4.5 years or so. It's now sat on, at time of filming, 163,825 miles. So it's high mileage. I've done over 100,000 miles in the 4 and a bit years I've owned it. And bearing in mind, we've been in lockdown a lot in that time as well. Wear a face mask, wash your hands, be a good boy or girl. That's impressive mileage to get out of this car. Volkswagen diesel engines, there's that 1.91 from a few generations before this that is highly regarded, the end of the 90s, early 2000s, I think that came in to production, and that's highly regarded. Engine code here. This engine, 1.6 litre, turbo diesel. Engine code here, because I can be nerdy. I'm not that nerdy right now. This engine has been faultless. Now, the reason that I say that this car is the most reliable car ever is that in the 4.5 years I've owned it, I've only ever needed to have a call out twice, and one of those things was entirely my fault. The other thing was an unfortunate thing that actually wasn't an issue with the car. It was just one of those things. So that first call out, I'd had the car about 4 months or so, maybe 5 months, and I was driving on the moors. My in-laws live on the moors, and we were at their house. I'd met my wife there after work, so we'd both taken our own cars, and yeah, I had to, on the way back off of Princetown, coming off Dartmoor, I had to take decisive action, as a Peugeot, like 306, something like that, was heading directly for my car on a country lane. So I moved across, I made a jolty move, and I burst my tyre. Foolishly, I didn't have my spare with me, so call out needed. The second time, which was about a year later, I had a really weird crunching sound, like a real metallic, sort of hollow metallic sound, coming from the front passenger wheel. Obviously concerned. I pulled over at Taunton Dean service station and phoned the AA, and they came to my rescue, and what turns out is that a stone had managed to get stuck between the brake disc and the brake pads, and that was causing the sound. So every time I broke, I was hearing this sort of sound. I mean, it polished the brake pad and discs up beautifully. Obviously ended their life prematurely, but yeah, that wasn't the car's fault. That's not an issue with this car. The only other thing that's actually gone wrong with this car that isn't a consumable to an extent is the fan blower motor. Now the fan blower motor I replaced myself. It cost about £100 for a new unit, and it was 3 screws. Now it wasn't that easy a job because it's underneath where the glove box is in the passenger footwell, and it was a bit of a pain in the arse because there's people waiting up there and I have no idea why. Oh, fair enough. It was a bit of a pain in the arse because you basically had to sort of manipulate your body into the passenger footwell to get access to it, and by that point you had like a T-Rex arm trying to get at screws, and they were Torx screws, so that's annoying, isn't it? But I did it. It took me about an hour to replace. I did it, and it's been faultless since. Obviously, you know, there's been oil filters replaced, it's been serviced. Every time the car tells me it needs a service, it's serviced. Because of the amount of miles I do in it, I have to make sure that the service history is on point. The front shocks went, but that was kind of my fault because that's when I lived in Silverton, where I like to do a lot of my filmed driving, those country lanes around there. And yeah, you know, I mean, it destroyed the shocks of this car. Both fronts destroyed. But, you know, I mean, I'd say that's a consumable that was kind of based on the amount of miles the car was on at that point and the driving that I was doing in it. So I was hardcore hitting those lanes every day. So, you know, you've got to expect that sort of wear and tear. Other than that, nothing. Nothing at all. And now I know I'm tempting fate as I drive over Bodmin Moor. I know I'm tempting fate by saying it's really reliable, never had an issue with this car. And so when I turn round and start driving home later on, I'm sure the car will break down, but fingers crossed it won't. But yeah, the car has been faultless. I mean, I get about 53, 54 miles to the gallon, which is ridiculous, especially if you compare that to my Honda Accord Type S, the CL9. That gets about 22 miles to the gallon. So considerably improved fuel economy. This car, it was registered in September 2013. So it's 8 years younger than my Accord. It's got 40,000, 41 and a half, nearly 42,000 miles more than my Accord. And do I think my Accord could take the beating that I give this car? I mean, Hondas are reliable. They're very reliable. And the things that have gotten wrong with my Accord are clearly things that are very, you know, age-based. I mean, the fact that, you know, the oil sump rotted out beneath it, that's not that car's fault. The fact that the radiator pops, that's a previous owner not looking after the car properly's fault. But this car, I mean, I can't believe how reliable it's been. It freaks me out how reliable this has been. Even little things like, you know, how often I have to, you know, fill the tyres, top up the oil. Rarely. I rarely have to do it. It gets serviced probably every 8,000 miles. It's never failed an MOT. It's never failed an MOT as far as I can remember. In my ownership, I'm pretty sure it's not failed an MOT. It's just ridiculous. It's ridiculous how reliable this car's been, and I thrash it. I mean, you know, that video at the start where I'm showing the car, you can tell I don't wash this car. I don't look after it in the same way as I look after the Honda, because I drive it so frequently that every time, you know, when I have washed it regularly in the past, as soon as I go for a drive, screwed again. It's completely filthy yet again. So you kind of get put off doing it, and, you know, I kind of try and save my let's wash a car time for the Honda. So this car, I kind of cast it aside. I kind of go, oh, it doesn't really, you know, I can't be bothered to wash it. It needs a good hoover inside. You know, it's the car I transport my daughter in, so there's obviously fingerprints and stuff like that in the back of the car. But the bolster of the seat is still fine. The material of the seat is still fine. All of the plastics in this car, they're not rattly. They don't rattle when I'm driving. I get a little bit of tweeter speaker issue if I'm listening to music loud, but it's just a solid car. It handles, considering the only modification this car's got other than tinted windows, and is that really a mod? It is, but is it really? It's been remapped. I got it remapped within the first sort of 10 days of owning it, because 1.6 litre diesel, rubbish. I got a decent set of figures out of that remap, and it has made the car far more enjoyable to drive. But even having sort of a remap done, you know, the car hasn't blown apart. It hasn't, considering it was set up to have 105 bhp and it's got, let's say, 55 to 60 more brake horsepower since having that remap done. Well, that's what they told me at least, and it's confirmed by my bum dyno. Like, none of the components that would then obviously be under more stress, like the turbo and things like that, elements of the engine, never had a problem. And it's nuts. It's nuts how I've never had a problem, because I rag this car. I rag the ass out of this car, and it's unbeatable. I mean, it's what, 2013, so it's 8.5 or just over 8 years old. It's done nearly 164,000 miles. Most of that has been done by me, and I've not sort of, you know, I've got a heavy foot. I've got a lead foot when it's over the throttle. So it's not like I treat this car with lots of respect. I don't. And it hasn't let me down yet. It hasn't let me down yet. So big props to Volkswagen for producing an engine that is this reliable, and also using materials that have lasted the test of time. I mean, you know, there's a slight bit of wear on the cloth seat under where I sit, but we're talking a slight bit of wear. We're not talking what you'd find in another car after 164,000 miles. It doesn't get the respect from me that it should. And so I thought, I've got to do a video. Also, I managed to get in some nice footage of Bodmin Moor, which even in winter is quite picturesque. I just thought I've got to bring this to the attention of the viewers, because this car's been on the channel a few times, but you know, it's not the most interesting car. It's pretty boring. It's what is designed as a commuter car, but it handles better than you'd expect. It's quicker than you'd expect with the remap that it's had. It's more comfortable than you'd expect. I mean, is it more comfortable? I mean, my CL9 is more comfortable, but that's because it's a bigger car. The seats are just a little bit nicer. But I've got no real complaints about this car. This car is taking everything I've thrown at it. It's not like dipping away. The performance isn't dropping. The car doesn't feel tired. When I'm driving it, it doesn't feel like some cars do, when you can feel that mileage. I've driven some BMWs where the mileage has, you kind of sit in the car and you kind of go, yeah, showing its mileage a bit there. And that's been at similar mileage to this. And this still feels solid. It still feels solid. The chassis feels great. The engine doesn't sound like it's going anywhere, you know? I'm not going through more oil like I did when with my first Mini, which was the yellow R50 Mini Cooper I had, which used to chew through oil even though it only had like 100,000 miles on the clock. So yeah, I mean, if you're looking for a daily that you want to last for a good length of time, you want something that is massively reliable, go for this. Go for a Mark 7 small diesel engined Golf. It's going to give you, it's going to cover all bases. It's going to give you everything you need it to give you. And that's the truth. You know, why would I lie? Do I have more fun driving my CL9? Yes. Is my CL9 more comfortable? Yes. Is it better fuel economy? No. Is it as reliable? Well, thus far, definitely not. Not that that's that car's fault, as I mentioned earlier. But this car, I mean, ridiculously reliable. Insane. And it handles well. I mean, this is a nice bit of quick road, quick country lane. And all right, so I've got to slow down to 40. Bad time to show you guys. Oh, this is a nice bit of country lane. Slow down to 40 miles an hour. But it's only briefly 40 miles an hour. But this car doesn't miss a beat. It doesn't feel like the performance is dropping off and the handling's dropping off. So yeah, the most reliable car ever, in my opinion, out of all the cars I've owned, which isn't that many really. Here we go. Oh, bit of country lane, quick fast road. I mean, picks up pace beautifully. I'm in 5th gear. I didn't need to change down to 4th to carry on momentum because this car's got a good amount of torque being diesel. And yeah, I mean, look, I'm taking this corner, which is a pretty tight corner. It's tighter in reality than it is on camera. I'm taking it quickly, and the car isn't losing its line. It isn't going anywhere. It's great. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, then please, 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 please subscribe. Turn on notifications. Find us on social media. I mean, SULKNATIONtv is across all social media now, so enjoy that. I mean, I try and post different things on each one, but sometimes I have to just share posts. And until the next time, I've been me.